and welcome to anybody who's watching later. Those that have been partying too much last night, whoever you may be. As you probably know, I finished my series of looking at the signs in John's Gospel last week. I'll just centre that a bit better. So I was obviously thinking I am just doing a one-off this morning, and because obviously having a break in August. So I was just really proud. I'm not used to doing one-off, so it was a bit strange really, because I usually preach through series. So I was just praying and asking God what He wanted me to talk about this morning. And you'll get what it is in a minute. When I was 16, which, as I was reflecting on this story, I was realizing is almost, not quite, but almost 50 years ago. I mean, doesn't seem possible. But when I was 16, I went on a youth hosteling tour in the Lake District with a friend, just the two of us, and we walked from youth hostel to youth hostel and around the Lake District for a week. In a couple of days, it absolutely chucked it down. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? But anyway. But to do it, of course, I had not just an ordinary rucksack, because I was taking clothes and everything for a whole 7 days. And I had this very, one of those really large packs that sort of went right above my head a bit and right down to my back, and it was really heavy. And I know I did enjoy it, but you do these things when you're 16, don't you? I wouldn't want to do it now. But I do remember that every day when I got back or got to the hostel, it was a great relief to put that pack down. And I just sensed that God was saying, I want to just say something about burdens this morning. So that's the topic, the burdens we carry. So let's have a look. When we've been doing John's signs, I've done a lot of really long readings, so this is a very, very short reading. But because it's so short, I'm going to do it 3 times in different versions. So, easing the load. This is the NIV. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And just one verse from Psalm 68, very famous verse. Praise be to the Lord, to God our Saviour, who daily bears our burdens. And then the Matthew version in the Passion reads like this. Are you weary, carrying a heavy burden? Then come to me. I will refresh your life, for I am your oasis. Simply join your life with mine. Learn my ways, and you'll discover that I'm gentle, humble, easy to please. You will find refreshment and rest in me. For all that I require of you will be pleasant and easy to bear. And then the good old Message. We've used this version before for this passage, but anyway, here we go. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Well, there's a promise for us. Yeah. Now, when I was thinking about burdens and what Jesus wanted me to say, I sensed that He didn't want me to talk particularly about the burdens of life that we all bear from time to time. Things that go wrong or things that are difficult, although He wants to bear those as well. I sensed that He wanted me to talk about some of the burdens that we place on ourselves that we don't really need to. And those are like inner burdens, if you like, the inner things that we tell ourselves or force ourselves to believe or to do. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Now, the burdens that we carry, those kind of burdens, the origins of them are many, I suppose, but they often come from our early formative years, as we know. When we're really young, particularly people who we respect or look up to or nurture us or help us, whether that's our families, obviously, or schooling environments and so on. Often they can say things or do things which then become our way of life and are things we carry throughout our adult lives. Some things we pick up because we think, I've got to do this or I've got to do that. And maybe it's part of our personality, some of the burdens we bear. Also, sometimes they're dumped on us. I was reminded when I was just thinking through this of that line of Jesus where he's criticising the Pharisees because he says, you've laid these burdens, which is all the laws and stuff, and particularly the extra laws that were never in the Old Testament. He says, you've laid these burdens on the people and you never lift a finger to help them. And sometimes others do lay burdens on us, burdens of expectation, whatever it might be, but they shouldn't. So, I'm just going to go through a few burdens that I just sensed God was putting onto my heart to talk about this morning. So, but first I want to say that in all of this, I don't want this to be condemning at all, in thinking, that's me. We all do this to one degree or another. The things I'm going to list in a minute, we all take as burdens to one degree or another. So we're all on the same journey. And sometimes I think that when we think about burdens and releasing burdens, we think it's all one or the other. We're either carrying it or we're not. But I think that actually it's more of a growing process. And that comes out in those Matthew translations. He talks about learning from me. Come to me and learn. So it's a growing process. It's a process. Also, there's kind of a lot of healing language in those versions. Talk about refreshing and rest and so on. It's a healing process. So we're all on the same journey of learning and letting Jesus through his Spirit help us to put some of these burdens aside and grow in them so they become less. Sometimes I think that actually it's not just letting go of the burden, but they just become a bit lighter and a bit lighter and a bit lighter until they don't have so much hold. And when we were at our this Vineyard Essentials, the word got out of my mind the other day, we were talking a bit about, because it was about vision, and we were talking a bit about the vision for the church and so on. And I guess, as I was reflecting on this, one of the visions that I hope we have for a church, amongst all the others, is that we create an environment that helps these burdens to go. Because actually church can be an environment that actually increases burdens rather than eases them. So I hope we can. We don't do it well often, but I hope we can be a church and an environment that helps us all to put these burdens down. So, personal, yeah. So burdens we shouldn't carry. This was the first thing that came to my mind, because I know that I carry it sometimes. It's just the old perfectionist thing and trying to be a superhuman. Again, this comes about through lots of different things, I guess. Sometimes it's modeled to us when we're growing up. Maybe our parents or relatives are very high achievers, or our siblings are, and we just think, we've got to do that as well. And sometimes we sense that we're never quite good enough, and sometimes parents or teachers or whatever can always, you get an A, but they say, why didn't you get an A plus? If only you'd worked a bit harder. And we kind of pick all that up. Sometimes, again, some of our characters are more prone to this, I guess. Some of us are more just those kind of people that want to achieve. So sometimes it can be our character. And often it's just that sense that I just need to do a bit more. I need to do a bit more. It's just to put it in a personal example for me when I'm talking. Sometimes I could do a perfect talk. And just imagine this, I do a really perfect talk. It's brilliant. In my dreams, I know, but just supposing in this brilliant talk that everybody's, there's one moment where I just suddenly have a brain freeze and I forget what I'm going to say. As does happen. Now, as a perfectionist, what I'll do is think, oh no, that was awful. It doesn't matter about the rest of it being Okay, it's just that moment when I lost it and forgot my words and forgot my train of thought, and that's the thing that will stay with me at the end of the talk. Or it's just that, that one person that says, oh, there's a bit of, didn't like that much, and it's that's the sense of perfectionist in me. And because of that, sometimes, perfectionists, we can be very sensitive to criticism, whether it's real or perceived even. Sometimes, we think of or perceive criticism even when it's not really there. Even if it's constructive, it gets us down. We're not good at delegating because of, who can do it as good as me? Nobody else will have that perfectionist ideal. They'll just have a bit of a lower standard. And I do think church can be an environment that almost promotes this, because we want to do our best for Jesus. Okay, we do. We know that, and that's fine. But I think, as it reminds us from that passage that we read, Jesus doesn't expect us to be perfect. Even though I know there's that verse in the end of part of the Sermon on the Mount somewhere, which Jesus says, "Be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect." And we can say, okay, that's what I need to be. I need to be perfect. But I think that's a mistranslation, really. If you read the commentaries, it actually means more about being mature and growing up. Actually, I'll just read you what good old Peterson says in the Message for that verse. If I can find it for you. He says this. He doesn't say be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. He says, in a word, what I'm saying is grow up. Your kingdom subjects now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously towards others, the way God lives towards you. That puts a completely different spin on it. And I think that's the spin that Jesus was actually thinking about. He never expects us to be perfect. He wants us to be growing towards the character of God. Now, not being a perfectionist doesn't mean we become lazy or just think, I can just wing a talk and not do any preparation and turn up, because that's going to the other extreme. All of these things have other extremes at the other end, and we don't want those either. But the burden of perfectionism, God doesn't expect you to be a superhuman. He just doesn't. Okay. The second one I thought of was just being ultimately responsible for another's well-being. That's a burden no one of us can bear. And I say ultimately because, we do have responsibilities towards our families, our friends, our church, and so on. It's not that we go to the other extreme and say, I don't care. I don't care about them. It's not what Jesus, what we're saying here. And particularly for those of us who have roles in life that are caring or training or helping, we do have caring hearts, and we want, as a pastor, I want your well-being, and I want to see you thriving. I long for that. But ultimately, I can't take that as my burden. I can't, although sometimes I do. I can't do that. We need to be able to release people to Jesus and to God, to trust that He's at work. We do what we can do, and we know our boundaries and limitations, and we know when to let it go and say, Lord, I'll continue doing what I can, but this is up to you. So it's not about looking after number one and saying, forget everybody else. But ultimately, it's a burden we cannot bear, to be ultimately responsible for somebody else's well-being, because they make their own choices and so on. So, people-pleasing. That's another one. It's another burden that we take upon ourselves sometimes. And I've been reading a book recently about anxiety, and in that book it lists 6 areas where we get our self-esteem from as part of talking about anxiety. And one of those is how other people perceive us and think of us. So that is important. But it's when that becomes the ultimate obsession for us, as to, I've got to please everybody. And I can say this story because they're not here this morning. But someone said to me the other day, one of the things I like about your church is that I don't have to be on best behaviour around the pastor. In other churches I've been in, I always have to be on best behaviour, or I felt that I have to be. I have to be trying to please them. Now, I hope you all know us well enough to know you don't have to do that. But sometimes, we can just spend our lives trying to please everybody. And again, let me into a secret. You won't do. You just won't. We can't please all of the people all of the time, as somebody once said. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we don't care what others think of us. But it's just that we don't obsess about the opinions of others. Wimber always used to say that I do my ministry for an audience of one, and that one is Jesus. And if we can get to that place, then that's a really healthy place to be. And obviously, yeah, if we know we're a bit of a people pleaser, then it becomes hard to say no, and we take on too much, and life gets out of control in all sorts of ways. So again, we need to learn boundaries. So that's a burden that Jesus doesn't want us to bear, to be a people pleaser. Doing life in whatever context in someone else's way. I suppose I'm talking about mould fitting, that pressure we sometimes feel to just do things how somebody else has done them. Jesus doesn't want us to do that. That's a burden we don't need to bear. We can be ourselves with him, and with, hopefully in the church, again, we want to encourage that kind of safety, that you can be who you are, and that you don't have to somehow be or do things in a way that is like me or like Helen or whatever. Now, it's not, the opposite of this, I suppose, is being different just to cause offence. And some people do that. They go around just trying to be different just to offend everybody. And, that's their identity, really. But no, we're not talking about that. But it's that thinking, I can just be me. And if I'm giving a talk, I don't have to do it like David does. And don't. If you ever are, don't do it like me, because you've got to be you. You've got to be you. And that's any form of ministry, whether it's praying or whatever. Be you. Okay. Keeping up appearances, that's another burden. We often feel we are often a bit actors, really. We feel we create an image for ourselves, and we've got to be that person, whether it's someone who was always a joker, always got a joke or a bit of a word of humour or something, and I've got to live up to that because that's who people know I am. So I've got to be that. I often feel sorry for comedians because they when they meet people, you have a sense that they're just waiting for a one-liner or something, and probably they're not in the mood at all, really. But it's that whatever it is that I've got to keep up that pretense, and maybe it's something to hide who we really are, that we do that. But acting a role in our lives is a terrible burden, and Jesus wants to free us from it. And the last one is just proving yourself, having to prove yourself to get success in life or results or whatever. And again, that can go right deep back to childhood and how we were encouraged in life in childhood. But one of the things about Jesus is, as it said in one of the translations, he's easy to please. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need success or results. Although obviously we want to do what we can for Jesus, but it's not about producing certain results and success. And I'm living proof of that. So as a church planter, so that's an encouragement to all of you. Okay, so let's move on. And how Jesus helps. And he does want to help from that passage that we read in Matthew. And the different versions just help bring a few different nuances out of that. But Jesus does want to help. And he does help. I'm on a journey of releasing lots of those burdens. I won't tell you which ones they are. You maybe be able to suss some of them out anyway. But I'm on a journey of letting go of some of those things. And the things that have helped me, and I just hope that they help you too. The first thing is this idea of coming to him. My sense is that it's that knowing that ultimate relationship with Jesus, knowing that that's secure. This is in my best moments, okay? Knowing it's secure, and that my self-worth and self-esteem is in him. And in my best moments, that's the rock that I stand on. In my worst moments, weaker moments, I lose it. But it's just that knowing that Jesus loves me, and knowing his unconditional love for me has just done something in my life, in my journey of faith, that I can't begin to thank him for, really. He took a neurotic, chronically shy, self-esteem through the floor teenager, and he changed me through his love. That's what he's done, because I've come to him. I'm still on the journey, but he's changed me in so many ways. I love the way that I think it's the Passion version, that it says, I am your oasis. I thought that was lovely, because it reminds me of, an oasis is obviously in the desert, and I just imagine the caravan trains going. And the caravan trains are beasts of burden, the camels and so on. Everybody's carrying a load of stuff across the desert, and they come to the oasis, and they all put it down, and they have a drink and refresh themselves. And it's about that stopping and resting and unburdening. And I think that's so good. That is so good. And that is something I'm trying to build into my life. Almost just that permission to relax and let it go. Relaxing may be alien to some of your natures, but without it, having those periods of rest when we just let things go, in whatever way that is, that works for you, is so important. And I think Jesus is just, again, saying to us, I'm giving you permission to relax. Come to the oasis, relax. Also, one of the I think it's again the Passion, it says that he's easy to please. And I do believe that about Jesus. So often we have that misinterpretation that he's a hard taskmaster. He's not. He's very easy to please. He delights in us. He delights in us just that we're on the way with him. And I just need to remember that he's easy to please, and I don't need to do this, and this to get him to love me or to be pleased with me. He just is. That's who he is. He is love. And so he is pleased with me. Just that coming to Jesus has helped me realise I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to prove. I don't have to prove myself to the world, to my parents, my family, the church, whoever. I just don't have to do that, because I'm in him, and that's all I need. So I'm hopefully beginning to learn, as Peterson puts it wonderfully in the Message, the unforced rhythms of grace. That's how I want to live my life, with an unforced rhythm of grace, knowing his grace upon me, within me, helping me, spending time with him, just letting things go, whatever it is, whether it's any of those 6 things that I mentioned, or whether it's other burdens that we just have in our lives, of difficulties and so on. All of those things, I want to learn to just rest, let it go, and say, Lord, I trust that promise in Psalm 68 is true, that you will help me daily carry my burdens. And he just doesn't want or expect us to bear them. He doesn't. So that's just what I want to leave you with. So I think I'm done.